What's the most unique trail name of anyone that I met on the trail? What happens when Baxter State Park hits their quota for the amount of permits that they'll give away to Summit Katahdin for thru hikers? And what long sleeve hiking shirt do I recommend? All that and more on this week's Q&A. Welcome back, hikers, to our weekly Q&A here on the channel. I'm Bigfoot. Got a load of questions in store for you today. The big one, the question of the week, what happens when Baxter State Park gives out all of the permits for thru hikers to Summit Katahdin? So that's our question of the week. But before we get into that and more, we are going to start off with our beer of the week. Now, if you're not familiar with the beer of the week, we started this about a month ago. Basically, I am going to pull a beer that I'm going to try from the comments below. So if you would like to have the beer featured next week that you'd like to see me try, place them below in the comments. This week's beer was brought to you by Matt Bullock, and he asked for a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. That's what we got right here. I'm not a huge pale ale guy. We'll see how I like this. I've actually never tried this specific one. My Devil's Backbone Brewery mug that I always drink my brewskis in. Cheers, everybody. A little bit ahead, not too bad. And now to the questions. This is how it works. Each week, I pull all my questions from the prior week's Q&A. If you want your questions featured on next week's Q&A, make sure you throw them below in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer as many as I can with the time that we have. Hey Bigfoot, have you climbed in the Adirondacks at all? Do you have any interest in climbing the ADK High Peaks and earning your 46er badge? I have not. I have not had any opportunities to go out to the Adirondacks yet, but it's something on the list, but it's not something that's really high on the list. I would love to get my 46er badge, but no plans right now or anytime soon, but definitely something that is on the list. What was the most unique trail name of someone you met on the AT? There are so many unique trail names that I've ran into on the trail and the hikers behind them. There's one though that really stands above the rest in my opinion. It wasn't so much the name. The name is cool, but it's the hiker that's behind it. I may have mentioned him before. His name was Handmade. He did a yo-yo in 2016, the year that I thru hiked. I met him on the top of Moosalak. He was heading southbound. He had just gone basically from Virginia. He started somewhere in Virginia. I don't remember where exactly, but he headed all the way northbound, got to Katahdin, and then flipped back, turned around, and head all the way back down to Springer. And then he turned around again and then went back up to Virginia to complete his entire flip-flop yo-yo. Anyway, Handmade. Handmade was someone that I heard about on the trail. I heard lots of stories. He got the name because pretty much all of his gear was handmade, especially his backpack. His backpack weighed, I heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, but his backpack weighed like 30 pounds or something like that just for the pack itself, 30, 40 pounds. They were made with not just, I can't remember the exact fabric that he used, canvas or something like that, but he used oar paddles or canoe paddles, something for the frame of his pack. He was probably the most extreme LNTer that I've ever met. LNT stands for Leave No Trace, which all of you know that I strongly, strongly support. And he would go all the way to say things and do things on the trail that was really extreme. An example was one time I heard about Handmade going through the 100-mile wilderness, which he was heading northbound, and all of the new Sobos were heading southbound, of course, and they'd only been on the trail for a week. He was walking through the middle of the trail in parts of mud that were, from my understanding, like 2 or 3 feet deep. And he was also walking with no shoes on, so he was just totally barefoot. The southbounders looked at him and just kind of had this impression like, holy crap, like this is what northbounders are going to be like. They're savage, like they're savage as. Anyway, he got into a debate with the hikers that were heading southbound because they were walking around these mud holes, and he was trying to preach about LNT, that you need to stay right directly on the trail, going right through it. Doesn't matter if it goes through mud or hell or whatever. Anyway, the story that sticks with me with Handmade, I was heading, this is after I met Handmade. I met him on top of Mountain Moosalak, like I said, and I ran into a couple of hikers at one of the huts. I can't remember which hut and they told me about this guy named Handmade, how crazy that he was. And they told me that I had to look at one of his logbooks, and the logbook was at the hut at Madison Hut, I believe. So I got to Madison Hut, and I found his entry. I actually took a picture of it. In for water and a poop. As proud as I am that I packed out my own turd from the Alpine Zone when these huts weren't open, I'm very glad that I don't have to do that this time again. Might get struck by lightning, but onward to the lakes. Handmade. After reading that entry and hearing all the stories about Handmade on the trail, that was the hiker that just stuck with me throughout the rest of my journey and probably was the most unique hiker that I heard, and some of the most unique and crazy stories I heard on the trail about anyone as well. Next question is about the OutdoorsmanLab sleeping pad. Question is, have you ever used this brand or know anyone else that has? If so, how has it stood up? There's a single long-term review out there for it. The $40 that I spent on it seems like a steal compared to the thermarest that you use. Thanks, P.S. I should be sporting one of your new shirts on my birthday next Tuesday. OutdoorsmanLab sleeping pad, I know very little about it. I really haven't heard any reviews on the trail about it. It weighs 16 ounces. It's only $40 on Amazon, so it is really cheap. Now, one thing I would just caution you about this specific pad, it has an R value of 1.3. Now, that's important because you're only really going to be able to use it during the summertime. It's recommended, according to Amazon and OutdoorsmanLab, that you are staying temperatures that are above 40 degrees. Now, the pad that I use has an R value of 3.2. I can use the NeoAir X Lite in spring and fall. I would go up to the Xtherm if I used anything in the winter, but it is great for 3-season use, which is why you're paying the extra money. But I can't really speak to the durability of the pad. Your intended use is to use this on the JMT. If it's going to be in the middle of summer where you're going to have temperatures way above 40 degrees, then you will probably be fine. But if you are going late in the season or early in the season, it is not a pad that I recommend. Hey Bigfoot, I am from West Central Wisconsin and was wondering if you've hiked any of the Ice Age Trail, and most importantly, the area I live in is pretty flat. Are there any trails in Wisconsin or Minnesota that you would recommend as pre-hikes gearing up for an AT hike? I have not hiked any part of the Ice Age Trail, nor any trail in Wisconsin that I can recall off the top of my head. For Minnesota trails, the Superior Hiking Trail is fantastic. It's going to do a lot of things to help get you ready for the AT. It's rockier because you're going along the north shoreline. It's going to help get you prepared for the rockier terrain that you'll see in parts of the AT. And it's got its fair share of challenges with terrain. Depending on what sections that you hike of the Superior Hiking Trail, there might be some days that you might be able to get a 3,000 or 4,000 foot elevation day in, which is pretty darn good. For you cheesehead hikers out there, are there any trails that you would recommend? Leave them below in the comments. Are you from Missouri? No, I lived in Missouri for 4 years, from 2013 to 2016. During that time I was living there, I spent a lot of time out on the Ozark Trail and a lot of the other trails in that area. That's really the reason why I'm going back to Missouri. Number one, I'm going to get a chance to see my old neighbor, spend some time with them. And secondly, I really want to finish the Ozark Trail. I've done so many section hikes of the Ozark Trail, and I would love to be able to just connect them all up and finish the entire trail. Woohoo! We got the question of the week. I know that Baxter State Park requires through hikers to obtain permits before summiting, and there is a cap on the amount of permits that Baxter State Park is giving. What happens if I get to Katahdin and all of the permits are gone? Good question. You're screwed. Just kidding. I actually took the liberty of calling Baxter State Park, and I spoke with Christine at the office. Made quite a few notes and wanted to go through what the facts are and what's going to happen if that does happen. First off, there are a total of 3,150 permits that Baxter State Park will be giving away between northbounders, southbounders, and flip-floppers. Now, you might have heard that there's a certain amount set aside for each type of hiker, Nobo, Sobo, flip-flopper, but that's really not the case. They basically are going to pool them all together, and they will give out no more than 3,150 permits. Every year there are more hikers on the AT. It's important to note though, last year the quota was not hit, so they didn't have to turn anybody away whether they went northbound or southbound. Now the process for getting this permit is quite easy. You basically are going to hike into Baxter State Park for northbounders. They're going to hike all the way past Abel Bridge, enter Baxter State Park. There is a ridge runner that is going to be basically stationed somewhere between Abel Bridge and Katahdin Stream Campground. Most likely, if you are hiking during one of the 5 days that Ridge Runner is working, they will be checking you in, and we'll let you know whether or not you have availability to stay at the Birches. And you're just going to continue and mosey your way onto Katahdin Stream Campgrounds. There's a ranger station right there. You'll go right in there, you'll check in, and they'll give you your permit. You only have to answer a few questions like what your trail name is, what your real name is, and then what day that you plan on summoning Katahdin. So what in the hell happens if the quota is met? First off, they're going to track how many permits that they've given out, and you can visit them on their Facebook page or their website, and they'll update that about every week. Second, when you get into Monson, which is the last trail town if you're heading northbound that you're going to get to before you actually get into 100 Mile Wilderness and then go into Baxter State Park right out of the 100 Mile, you will want to check in and find out what their permit situation is. Now, it's likely, but not quite sure how they're going to communicate when they hit the quota. If they hit the quota, that is. They likely will have something posted at A-Ball Bridge because that's on the outskirts as you actually enter Baxter State Park, but they haven't really identified, or at least not to Christine's knowledge. Should the quota be met, you're going to have to get a permit to hike inside of Baxter State Park, a day use permit, like every other person that goes to Baxter State Park, which is through Toke Gate, or you can head right into Millinocket and then go to their Baxter State Park headquarters there in Millinocket, and you can also get your day use permit there as well. Now, there is a restriction of how many day use permits that they give out, so you might not be able to get a permit if you're getting there really late in the day and want to be able to hike up Katahdin the following day. So it just kind of really depends on what time of the year it is. It'll probably be later in the year, I'm assuming, if the quota has already been maxed, but that's just something to know about. Another thing that Christine wasn't sure that they have figured out yet is if the quota is met, what they're going to allow hikers to do. Are they going to allow them to be able to hike into Baxter State Park all the way to Katahdin Stream Campgrounds? Or are they going to close the entrance at the start of Baxter State Park, the southern start, which basically is right after you hit A-Ball Bridge, so that thru-hikers actually can't physically get in, which I really don't know how they're going to do that. The two options, either you'll have the opportunity to get in the park and hike all the way to Katahdin Stream Campground, but you're going to have to figure out a place to stay. You have to get a campground reservation, or you're going to have to leave the park and then come back when you get your permit, or you're going to have someone shuttle you up to Toke Gate to be able to get your permit at the gate. Or another option, which is what Christine recommended, is that you call for a shuttle. There is a hostel in Millinocket. They'll come and pick you up at A-Ball Bridge. They'll take you back to Millinocket. You can stay at their hostel. And then when you're in Millinocket, you can get your permit at the Baxter State Park headquarters. For those with a time crunch who are doing long section hikes or through hikes like you did on your AT 100 days, do you have any tips on how to keep the pressure to make miles from taking away from the enjoyment of the time on the trail? I have a few tips. I did a lot of different ways to kind of trick my mind so that I could enjoy the trail more and not keep my mind focused on the amount of miles that I have to do and the amount of mileage I have to do per day, because it got a little overwhelming and would give me anxiety if I really just thought about it. I did a video pretty much just dedicated on this called How I Hiked the AT in 100 Days. I'll link it above here if you're interested in watching it. But what it all came down for me was how I managed my time and goals that I set for myself. I had to keep my mind off of it. One thing that I had every single day was some sort of goal, whether it was to get to a certain place by a certain time, or maybe it was a mileage goal, or maybe it was a stretch of the trail, how fast I could do it. Whatever it was, I had some sort of goal to keep my mind off of things each and every day. Now, many days I opted to hike longer days, more hours of the day, so that I didn't have to hike as fast to be able to get my miles in. I wanted to enjoy parts of the trail. There were many times I did stop and smell the roses. Based on a lot of videos I saw about the AT and knowing what areas that I wanted to spend more time in, I managed my schedule around the places that I wanted to make sure that I spent time at, and built that into my schedule so that I knew I could at least spend that certain amount of time there, and worked it around by either hiking longer hours, longer days, and other days to get my miles in, or taking a 24-hour cheat day. Basically what that was is anytime I hiked into town, I would get up very early and hike hard and try to get into town by no later than 2 p.m. I would get into town, check into my hotel hostel, do all of my chores like doing my laundry, doing my resupply, grabbing something to eat, those sorts of things. When I got done with all that, I would go back and relax at my place and usually go to bed quite early. And the next day, I would try to check out of the place as late as possible. if they would let me check out at 1 p.m., I would not check out until 1 p.m. Essentially what happened was I was able to spend about 24 hours in town of no hiking. Once I did check out and got back on the trail, I hiked hard and hiked long into the night until I hit my mileage. Typically, I would try to hike 20 to 22 miles in the day I hiked into town, and then 20 to 22 miles when I hiked out of town. Together, I was still able to get somewhere between 40 to 45 miles, so I hit my mileage that I needed, but I was also able to take about 24 hours of total rest and relaxation in town. So this helped me relax and refresh, and because of that, I was really fresh when I hit the trail almost every single time out of the trail town, which meant I could hike longer hours, more miles, and spend the time I needed to whenever I wanted to. Have you heard any reviews or opinions on the Vasque Saga GTX hiking boots? I cannot find any other than the Vasque ads. I honestly haven't, partly probably because I don't wear hiking boots anymore. I did have a pair of Vasque boots back in the day, maybe like 8 years ago, and from what I remember, I liked them, but I had a lot of issues with blistering, but they held up really well, and they had a lot of ankle support, but I'm really not familiar with them at all. So I'll throw it back out to all of our viewers. If anybody knows anything about the Vasque Saga GTX boots, if you'd be kind to leave what your review is of those boots below in the comment section and help us out, much appreciated. Our last question, do you have a recommendation for a long sleeve hiking shirt for summer? I sweat a lot but need UV protection for my arms when the sun is out. I do have a couple of recommendations. The first is a popular shirt that I see a lot out there, which is the Columbia Silver Ridge light long sleeve. And a lot of hikers like that one because of the comfortability of it, and it does a pretty good job with being able to protect your arms. Now for me, if I was going with a long sleeve hiking shirt for say somewhere like the desert where I needed protection, I would probably go with the Ex Officio So Cool Performance Hoodie. The reason why I would go with that is really for two. Number one, it's got great UV protection, and number two, it does a great job with being able to protect your neck. And when things start to get colder, I would just use it as my hoodie and be able to use that as kind of like I do with my Patagonia quarter zip hoodie, where I use that when it starts to get cool at night. I'd be able to use both for the different times of the day or different temperatures of the day. And when you're hiking the desert, it's hot during the day and then cool at night. And that about does it for our Q&A this week. I got a little bit more beer than I normally would, just because I'm just really not digging pale ales very much. This one is okay, but I probably would never go out and just buy this out of the store and drink it leisurely. But for you guys, I will definitely do it. Couple updates. We just finished the Million Step Challenge. I'm going to do a dedicated video talking about all of the folks that accomplished the super awesome, sweet goal of walking 1 million steps in the first 90 days of the year. I start the Ozark Trail. It's happening. It's almost here. I step foot on the Ozark Trail this Saturday, the 6th of April. Now, because I'm going to be on the trail, there will be no Q&A next Thursday, but I will do a live Q&A after the trail sometime to answer all and any of your questions about the Ozark Trail. Now, of course, I'll be vlogging on the trail, and I might try to upload one video while I'm actually on the trail, and then when I get back, I'll edit the rest of the videos and get them up and going. But if you'd like, you can actually follow me on the trail. I'll give you my GPS so you can track me every foot of the way, and you can also be a part of our group where I give live trail feeds. I'm going to do a live Q&A while I'm on the trail and lots of other cool stuff. You can find out more on my Patreon website. I will link it here below. You can become a patron for as little as $1, and then it goes up from that depending on what reward level that you would like to do to support the channel here and everything that we do. If you found this video to be of any help, give me a thumbs up. Stay tuned for more sightings, and remember to always follow Bigfoot. See you guys next time.